What's going on, YouTube? Another video for y'all. The NBA is the greatest professional sports league in the world, not just for the athletic marvel, but to witness every game and even more so for the drama that it provides for fans all over the world. Whether it's KD turning on OKC to join a Golden State team, or D'Angelo Russell snitching on his own teammate, to then NBA Commissioner David Stern canceling a deal that would have sent point guard Chris Paul to the Lakers. There's no shortage of drama to be found on that. While on-court competitiveness and last-second clinchers are the NBA's most lived for, there are also those that get their kicks from off-court gossip and melodramas. And as gossip goes, these things, when told over and over again, take on a life of their own and blur the lines between fact and fiction. While there are plenty of urban legends in the NBA, we've gathered the most 5 intriguing ones for you in this video. At number 5, Michael Jordan's retirement in 1993. In October of that year, Michael Jordan shocked the entire world when he retired from basketball, not long after leading the Chicago Bulls to their 3rd straight chip. And while that announcement raised a lot of eyebrows, conspiracy theories began coming out of the woodwork when Jordan decided to sign a minor league deal with the Chicago White Sox. And just a few months later, even though he would have had trouble hitting a beach ball, yet alone a baseball. In 102 games with the Barons, Jordan had a .202 average with 3 homers, 51 RBIs, 30 stolen bases, 114 strikeouts, and .555 OPS. And there was lots of questions, but the most common one was, why would the face of the league on the best team in the league, who was known for his enormous competitive drive and his desire, all of a sudden retire in the middle of his prime? At the time of his retirement, Jordan explained that he had simply lost his desire to play basketball. Later on, he also disclosed that the untimely demise of his father also had a hand in his decision to step away from the game. His autobiography even described Jordan having thoughts of early retirement in the summer of 1992. But was it really those things? At the time of his retirement, the NBA was in the middle of a huge investigation into Jordan's gambling habits, which had come to the forefront after a few stories surfaced in the previous months. San Diego businessman Richard Aquinas revealed in his book Michael and Me, Gambling Addiction, My Cry for Help, that he had won over $900,000 from Jordan in golf bet. He was also in an Atlantic City casino in the early hours of the morning of Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Final. Jordan even admitted under oath that a $57,000 check in his name found at a convicted drug dealer's home was payment for a previous gambling debt. Also, in the much respected book Money Players' Days and Nights Inside the New NBA by Armen Keteyian, it disclosed that in 1993, the league had an interview with Aquinas during the investigation on Jordan's gambling. He said that in March of 1992, he overheard a telephone conversation Jordan was having with an unknown person. During that conversation, he heard Jordan talking about betting a line, and while the game he was referring to remains unknown, the accusations were extremely serious, as that would mean if Jordan was indeed betting on sports, he was breaking a sacred unwritten rule of all professional athletes. At the press conference, when he was asked if he would ever return, Jordan said, 5 years down the road, if the urge comes back, if the Bulls will have me, if David Stern lets me back in the league, I may come back. Now this is when the conspiracy machine went into overdrive. Why in the world would Jordan ever say if David Stern lets him back, then maybe he would come back, when the reporter didn't even mention Stern's name at all? Days after Jordan announced his retirement, the league dropped its investigation, clearing him on any wrongdoing. Was there a secret between Jordan and Stern where Stern told him to simply retire and create a distraction so that he wouldn't face a suspension and have his huge marketable name stay clean? Tinfoil hat wearers believed that this was the case. The conspiracy theory dictates that NBA Commissioner David Stern actually had an agreement with Jordan to get his gambling debt under control before encouraging any damage to the league or to Jordan himself. So in other words, Stern suspended Jordan for a year while number 23 got his personal life together. These theories still go on. After this, Jordan was and still is one of the most marketable and prominent professional athletes in history. So even though most of Jordan's gambling habits were legal, the image of Jordan having an outstanding gambling debt with a convicted drug dealer would be potentially harmful to Jordan and the league. Up to his dying day, Stern maintained on several occasions that Jordan's retirement was totally legit. At number 4, Chris Paul in his raid towards the Clippers locker room through a secret tunnel at Staples Center. On January 15, 2018, the Houston Rockets and the Clippers played in a fairly competitive basketball game that saw a lot of chirping and a lot of nothing. Things got heated late in the game when some trash talking and maybe some cheap shots led to a few confrontations and ejections. Events that unfolded right after the final buzzer, though, proved to be both entertaining and unforgettable. Several Rockets players, upset at Austin Rivers and Blake Griffin, approached the Clippers locker room with intentions of confronting them. Varying degrees of success depending on which account you believe. And that's when all the ruckus happened. On that evening, it was reported that the Rockets used a secret passage, what was anything but secret. Yes, the mental image of Paul, a Clipper for 6 seasons, knowing a secret entrance to his old team's locker room and then leading his new team in on that excursion right through an entrance to confront his former coach's son for talking junk. But it's just too beautiful to pass up. The fact is, there is a hallway that you can use to go from the Rockets locker room to the Clippers locker room, but no, it's not a secret. It's really not a passage either. It's widely accessible to everyone. Another report had Rockets center at the time, Clint Capella, acting as a diversion, knocking on the front door of the Clippers locker room, while Houston's other group, the one with Paul and Ariza, flanked them. Reportedly, a Clippers staff member opened the door, saw it was Capella, and shut it on him. Capella lingered around before returning to the Rockets locker room. However, wrong, that didn't happen. As a matter of fact, it wasn't even Capella that was knocking on their door, but rather another Rockets big man, Tariq Black. Furthermore, there was no purpose about his visit. As the story goes, he was walking by the locker room, heard a commotion, was denied entrance by a Clippers team employee, and ultimately moved on without joining in any other way. In the end, everyone was thoroughly amused by the entire incident, which included Hall of Famers Shaq and Charles Barkley, who almost died laughing on TV. At number 3, Tony Braxton broke up with the young, promising core of the Dallas Mavericks. Back in the 90s, the Mavs built a young core called the Triple J Ranch that composed of wings Jim Jackson and Jamal Mashburn, plus young, brilliant point guard Jason Kidd. But it didn't work. Should have been a long run together, ended in December 1996 when Kidd was traded to the Phoenix Suns, while Jackson and Mashburn were traded away that February. Jackson would become a solid player, Mashburn would become an all-star, and we all know Jason Kidd went on to become one of the greatest ever, but none of them meshed in Dallas. Why? A big heaping chunk of beef. A bunch of young, headstrong players organized in an unclear hierarchy surrounded by veterans at the time and coached by a revolving door of personalities and philosophies was never going to work. And they fought about basketball, about business matters, and famously about women. If you heard anything about this Mavs, it was that the trio's relationship was broken apart by Tony Braxton. Yes, Tony Braxton, the pop superstar. Now, this is a story straight out of a soap opera. The question remains, was it really Braxton's fault? Legend goes that on one night in 1996, Braxton dipped out on Kidd to hang out with Jackson, causing a split between the two players. For her part, Braxton never confirmed nor denied anything, saying that she didn't kiss and tell at that time. This is all while promoting her new album, Secrets. All 3 of the players have came forward and denied the rumor in some way, shape, or form. Mashburn in a 2015 interview tried to clear up the air regarding saying, "She definitely cost me relationships with Jimmy Jackson and Jason Kidd," and later said that she had something to do with it in her Secrets album. Jackson, meanwhile, has got on record saying it didn't happen, and later said, "I'm sorry bro, that's all I got for you. It didn't go down like you think it did." Jason Kidd also said that he never even met Braxton. "Not true," Kidd said. "It was never true. Never met the woman, it was never true. It just somehow took on the legs of its own, and she breathed life into it, and I guess that didn't help with the kiss and tell and whatever she said." However, perception has somehow become reality, and this is the story people have been running with for decades now. At number 2 is Paul Pierce's wheelchair injury. In Game 1 of the 2000 NBA Finals between the Celtics and Lakers, Paul Pierce went down in a heap and looked like he suffered a serious injury. With Lakers leading 60-58, Pierce is guarding Kobe on the left wing. Bryant calls for a Pau Gasol pick, Kevin Garnett shows, and Pierce goes under the screen. He loops out wide away from KG. Then he finds a small seam, hits turbo, and plunges through the lane taking a jumper, contested by Pierce. As the shot drops, Pierce crumples to the floor and stays there, withering in apparent pain. He appeared to suffer so bad that he had to be carried off on a wheelchair, and he went to the locker room for further evaluation. It was a deep concern for both the Celtics and NBA fans, since it was exceedingly rare for a wheelchair to be brought out for any player. Even players who suffer serious leg injuries even attempt to hobble off the court. And the truth was in so much pain that he couldn't even stand. But then 2 minutes later, Pierce returned to the court and the game crowd went nuts. It was reminiscent of Knicks legend Willis Reed, who defied a torn thigh muscle to take on Wilt Chamberlain and the Lakers in the 1970 finals. He showed no symptoms of injury or fear, risking further damage, and scored 13 points in the game's final 18 minutes to lead the Celtics to victory and set the stage for the first and only championship of his career. Well, people began to wonder what the big deal was with Pierce's knee. After that miraculous comeback, the man was in agony, needed a wheelchair just to get off the floor. Something had to be wrong. That incident has since then been given the Zapruder film treatment, with one explanation for what happened. Some have ventured that Pierce pooped his pants during the game and quickly hatched a scheme to be removed from the floor without anybody seeing his stained shorts. This theory checks out from a logical perspective. The way that Pierce was carried out and placed on a wheelchair and his butt was out of sight from the cameras. However, the official story is that Pierce's wheelchair excursion is that upon contesting Kobe's jumper, he heard a pop and he feared that he may have blown his ACL. Many years after the event, the man nicknamed The Truth eventually spilled the beans on the entire incident. And to further debunk the Paul Pierce poo game theory, the video shows the stained shorts were taken away from Game 2. Pierce's wheelchair ride happened in Game 1. And at number 1, the time when Greg Popovich had an air condition turned off in the NBA Finals. The Miami Heat, their amazing comeback in the 2013 Finals to beat the Spurs, nobody knew how the Spurs would respond. After all, they were a rebound or a free throw away from winning the NBA championship, but LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and Ray Allen put a stop to all that with one of the most iconic shots and quarters in NBA history. Well, fast forward a year, and Spurs came back with vengeance, working on their way back to the Finals, hoping to get revenge against the Heat. The Heat stormed to the Finals where the Spurs got off to a slow start, going all the way 7 games in the first round, but eventually making it to the championship. It looked like a classic series with both teams playing tough and the game close. But thanks to the malfunctioning air conditioning, temperature in the Spurs arena rose to over 90 degrees and LeBron got the worst of it. He cramped up and he had to leave the game during the third quarter. LeBron eventually returned but had to get out of the game again with 7:31 to go in the fourth quarter. The Spurs immediately went on a 10-4 run, turning a 2-point deficit into a 4-point lead. LeBron came back in with more than 4:33 left to go and immediately drove to the rack and scored. That cut the Spurs lead to 2, but he cramped up and had to be carried off the court. It was all the Spurs needed to claim Game 1, as they finished the game on a 16-3 run with LeBron out. Some believe that Coach Popovich ordered the AC to be turned off to benefit the Spurs and hurt the ironically named Heat. It was a wacky theory that got more traction when former NBA great Jason Terry alleged to a Dallas radio station that the Spurs were responsible for the power outage. You know what? Pop has done that so many times. I don't know if it's conspiracy, but I'm telling you, going to San Antonio is a tough place to play. I can remember very well one time it was cold showers. There was about 1,000 flies in the locker room. This year, there was a snake in the locker room. So they're going to pull out all the stops to get into your head. When you go to San Antonio, expect something like that. And Miami fell victim to it. Pop stoked the fires even further when he said he saw the air conditioning people in the hallway when we were leaving last night and I sent them home. But in reality, it was nothing more than an electrical malfunction that can happen anytime and anywhere. The Heat players themselves laughed at the situation, since stars Tim Duncan or Tony Parker could have easily got those sauna-like conditions of James, but they just didn't have the cramps. And Heat star Dwayne Wade could do nothing but shrug off the miraculous theory, and in this quote you can see he just saying it was the Heat's fault. The way they played was why they lost, not the temperature. Alright, that does it. That's a look at 5 odd stories. Be sure to subscribe if you're new, give us a thumbs up, and as always, thank you for watching.